Good afternoon and welcome to everybody. I am Rich Lyons, Dean of Berkeley-Haas School of Business. I want to welcome you to this, our Dean Speaker Series, our highest profile series of speakers. This is the last of our speakers this fall, and we have a wonderful guest and friend and fellow alum, and I will introduce her in just a moment. I also want to welcome, we have an awful lot of our students and community that are also here connected to us live and remote, and we'll make sure we get their questions in when we get to the Q&A period as well. So what we do, as you know, through this Dean Speaker Series, we're bringing in people of really remarkable distinction, remarkable leaders in their fields, lots of different fields. They also are wonderful exemplars of our defining principles, which in many ways are leadership principles. They are what leadership is about, and the Speaker Series is what leadership is about. So when we think about things like question the status quo, things like confidence without attitude or beyond yourself, right? You're going to see those in our guests today in spades, as you've been seeing them in all of our speakers. I just wanted to call that out because she and her partner, both alums, partner at Revolution Foods, are a great success story and just perfect exemplars of what this school is about. It's really I take great pride in being able to introduce her and what she has accomplished here today. So many of you are familiar with what Kirsten has achieved and much of what their organization has achieved. Kirsten Tobey and Revolution Foods is a remarkable success story. She's got a lot of background in doing things that are connecting to schools, connecting to learning, connecting to food, connecting to how we connect to our food, right? That's really at its most fundamental level what she is about. Her undergraduate work was at Brown University, where she ran a children's garden education program. She's done that in California. She's done that in Rhode Island. There are many elements of her background that you can see the tributaries that feed into what she's achieved more recently. Passion for sustainability really throughout her life and building community health. She ran a public health campaign for Earth Justice. It was here at Haas, while working on her MBA, that she met her classmate and future business partner, Kristen Richmond. And the idea for Revolution Foods was born while they were here. In fact, it was a project, and I think she will talk a little bit about that. She and Kirsten won the 2007 GSVC competition, our Global Social Venture competition, and they really haven't looked back since. Revolution Foods today serves more than 1 million meals a week in nearly 1,000 schools across the country. This fall, Kristen and Kirsten were named in Fortune's 40 Under 40, the list of young, quote, young hotshots who are rocking business, end quote. That's directly from Fortune. CNN Money put Revolution Foods on its 2012 list of 100 fastest growing inner city companies, and Inc. magazine named it the 6th fastest growing food and beverage company. Lots of accolades. They will also be part of our wonderful celebration tomorrow. If you're going to be at our Haas Gala, our wonderful annual event in San Francisco, they are receiving our Leading Through Innovation Award, which we give to alums and members of our community who have established remarkable and breakaway, really path-bending things, and they have certainly done that. They have been recognized again and again and again for their bold mission in the way they transform the way students eat and the way all of us think about that part of our lives. Please welcome with me our friend Kirsten Tobey. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's so fun to be back at Haas, and to see, this is the first time I've seen the patio out there and seeing people hanging out on the patio. We used to sort of have to sit along the long benches and do our group projects together. So it's great to see tables and all the great new stuff that's going on here. I'm also so excited to hear about the core values that are starting to become more of part of the culture here. And I think that you will see a lot of that stuff was stuff that influenced Kristen and me when we were here 8 years ago, although it hadn't been fully defined yet. So exciting to be back. I'll start just with a little bit of kind of background on what Kristen and I came in, or what we were looking at when we were here at Haas, and what we were inspired by to really start to build this movement towards a healthy food revolution in America. A lot of these statistics were just starting to come out 10, 12 years ago around the obesity crisis, the health crisis that's plaguing our youth today. Obesity is costing the healthcare system billions of dollars every year. It's going to cost over $1 trillion over the next 5 years. And this is because of all of the related things, diabetes, heart disease, all of the things that kind of come along with this problem. So it's not just about obesity, it's all the associated health issues that are all completely preventable. So that was one of the things that, when we started looking at these things, we were, I think questioning the status quo is a really good way of describing it. We were seeing these headlines and saying, why isn't anybody doing anything to change what's happening here? 1 in 3 children born in the year 2000 will be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, again, a preventable form of diabetes. This is 1 in 2 children in minority communities and inner city communities. So just staggering statistics. For the first time ever, children in America will live a shorter lifespan than their parents' generation. And that was another thing that really shocked us. Both Kristen and I are now moms, and thinking about that fact that every parent wants a better future for their kids, and the fact that we're raising a generation of kids who are at this point set up to live a shorter lifespan because of these preventable diseases was another kind of really big rallying cry for us when we came here. So we started questioning. We said, how can we create some kind of a scalable model that will increase access to healthy food and really increase affordable access to healthy food for kids in America today? And we navigated this question through a lot of different classes at Haas. We didn't come in, having this idea and this business plan and coming in here to work on it. We came in with some knowledge about what was going on in America today and wanting to change that. So one of the classes that we took was a new product development class, where we went out and we spent time with kids, and we spent time with principals of schools, and we spent time with parents, and we said, what's going on today that's kind of causing this, that's causing kids to not learn healthy habits in their lives. And over and over again, we heard kids just don't have access to fresh, healthy food. We also recognize that there's a whole other part of the equation around physical activity, and that's another really important part of the equation. But we really were interested in how can we change the food ecosystem to set these kids up for success, especially kids in low-income communities who are disproportionately affected by, both the lack of access to healthy food, but also in turn by the health consequences that come along with that. So we wanted to really look at, how can we change this model? How can we increase access to affordable, healthy food? We also started sort of coalescing around a set of core beliefs that we had ourselves, and we really believed that all kids deserve access to healthy food, regardless of where they're born or where they live. We very strongly believe that health is a key driver, not just for people feeling good and being healthy and living a long time, but it's a key driver for kids in academic success. If kids aren't set up with a nutritious, healthy meal throughout their day, they're not going to succeed in school. And kids who don't eat breakfast have been shown to not do as well in school as kids who do eat a healthy breakfast. So we looked at all of these things and just really started looking at how can we change this situation. We also had a lot of people telling us, you're not going to ever change the way that kids are eating. Eating habits are so intractable. We've got, our society has gotten to this industrialized point where all the food is highly manufactured, and everybody loves the taste of chips and soda, and we've all been trained to, kids have been trained to like these things, and that's what they'll choose, and you're not gonna ever be able to change this. And we couldn't accept that as an answer. We couldn't accept that we're just on this kind of downward trajectory of spiraling towards shorter and shorter lifespans, and so we kind of looked at where else has a behavior been changed successfully in America. So we looked at places 30, 50 years ago, cars didn't even have seatbelts in them, and people had no idea that wearing seatbelts was a behavior that could save their life. Now we have laws and regulations requiring, adults and kids to wear seatbelts in cars, and we're saving lives because of that change in behavior that's come from, large scale national effort to change it. Similarly with smoking, we had, high rates of smoking in both adults and teenagers 30, 40, 50 years ago, as the knowledge and research has come out about what are the damaging consequences of smoking, and then the added kind of social pressures around smoking becoming less accepted and less kind of cool in a social sense. Society has largely changed its habits away from this unhealthy habit. We also looked at just other behaviors that aren't necessarily directly affecting kind of human health in a direct sense, but behaviors like recycling. We had 30 years ago, everybody was throwing everything into the trash. Today, you have kids who are policing their parents, saying, "No, that goes in the glass, and that goes in the paper, and that goes in the compost." So we had this reason to believe that we could change eating habits, and that habits aren't intractable and behaviors aren't intractable if you can approach the issue in the right way. So while we were here, as I said, we took a new product development class that got us out talking to sort of the end users of the health issues that we were looking at. We were talking to kids, we were talking to principals. We were really kind of open to what the solution we were going to develop was going to be. We looked at all different kinds of models. We looked at, should we build a consulting model where we consult to kids or families or schools on how to build healthier menus, or we looked at starting a nonprofit that would just do educational work and teaching kids about healthy food and eating and things like that. We looked at building some kind of a partnership with a corporation that was maybe had an interest in changing eating habits or creating healthier products. But ultimately, we decided that all of these things that were going on, nobody was quite addressing the issue in the way that we thought it needed to be addressed. So we decided to take a leap, and we decided to, about, I guess, 2/3 of our way through our MBA careers, in the first semester of our second year, we looked at each other and we said, we've got to start a whole new company that's going to address this issue, and that's going to increase access to high quality food for kids in schools, but that's also going to create a platform for large scale change in American eating habits generally. So we quit our job searches. We'd been working on our resumes. We decided we're not going to work on our resumes anymore. We're going to just really focus. We're going to take every class we can that's going to help us to start this company. We spent. I remember we would sit there looking at our class lists and saying, okay, well, what are we going to get out of this one that's going to help us to write the business plan, and what are we going to get out of this one that's going to help us to write the business plan, and we were very focused around everything we were going to do was going to help us to start this company coming out of our second year. So we first, the language has evolved a little bit, but we really wanted to start out with a very clear mission statement of what we were trying to do. And this was based on our beliefs around setting kids up for success academically as well as in health. We want to build lifelong healthy eaters by making kid-inspired, chef-crafted food accessible to all. And all of these words we've chosen over the years very carefully because the kid-inspired is incredibly important to us. We learn every day from the kids that we work with, and we incorporate their feedback into everything that we do. And that's how we've been able to overcome the people saying kids will never eat healthy food. Well, if you ask them and you let them try it and you let them give input, they will. They are open. They are, if you respect the kind of end consumer of your product in the most fundamental way, they are open to learning and changing and adapting new behaviors and eating habits. And accessible has always been incredibly important to us. We wanted to make sure that the food that we created would be accessible to all kids, regardless of where they were born, regardless of the family they come from, regardless of their income level or the neighborhood that they live in. So we wanted to make sure that was captured in both affordability in our product, but also in the way that students could access our product. So that was kind of what made us really zero in on focusing on school meals as the place to start increasing access to high quality, healthy food. And I think that this led us to the notion that we needed to take what was going on in schools. This is a picture we took in a public school in Oakland when we were first doing our market research. This is what kids were being served. It was almost unidentifiable what the food was. There was not a single piece of fresh fruit, not a single vegetable on the lunch line. And this was being served day in and day out. And it's like, no wonder these kids aren't eating healthfully and aren't building healthy habits. And also the achievement gap is increasing in the schools where this kind of food is predominantly being served. So we went out and said, all these ideas around a consulting model or whatever, we needed to be able to wipe the slate cleaner and just start from scratch. So we decided to just start making high-quality food ourselves. We rented a kitchen in Emeryville. We partnered with a great catering company that gave us some kitchen space, and we hired a chef. And we said, let's just start making this food and making it in a way that's compliant with the federal guidelines so that kids who qualify for free meals at school can access the food for free. But designing it in a chef-crafted way so that the flavor and deliciousness of the food is kind of the first and foremost thing that kids and adults notice about the food when they eat it. Not like, oh, this is really affordable, but, oh, this is really delicious. And by the way, it's also accessible and affordable at the same time. We spent a lot of time really focusing in on sort of our food values and how do we build an affordable food platform that has high quality ingredients, but at the same time, maintains a reasonable cost structure. We came up with our, a standard that we call real food for all. That means if it's not real food, it doesn't go into our meals. It has to be, free of anything artificial, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no artificial preservatives. We've also eliminated some things like high fructose corn syrup that are just so highly processed and manufactured that they're almost just a symbol of what's going wrong in the food system. So we said we're not going to have any of that. And then we really built a focus around balance from a nutritional standpoint. A lot of whole grains, fresh fruit and vegetables, high quality proteins, and that's kind of formed the basis of our overall kind of brand and food philosophy when it comes to a food perspective. From the beginning, we started serving lunch, but also breakfast, after-school snack, and we're now serving supper as well, which is a new federal program that's feeding a supper to kids who stay at school until 5:30. And we've really focused on building out a really broad menu because a lot of kids are eating 3 meals a day at school now, and especially the lowest income kids are reliant on those meals for 2/3, if not 3/4 of their calories in the day. So we wanted to make sure that if kids are going to be eating this food every single day, 3 meals a day, or at least 2 meals a day, that it encompassed a really wide variety of flavors and food profiles and all of that kind of stuff, so that it didn't feel like you're always eating the same thing. And we've really been focused on the impact that we're having. We listen to kids, as I said earlier. And listening has been such an important part of our learning over the years. And it's listening not just to the kids, listening to teachers, listening to parents, listening to everyone who's telling us the things that they like, but also telling the things that that need improvement in the food or in the flavor or whatever it might be. And I would say that that's been the biggest sort of key to innovation for us, is not thinking that we have all the best ideas, but thinking that the best thing that we can do is to learn from the people who we're working with and serving every day. Some of those ideas come from employees, some of those ideas come from students, but very rarely is it just our team sort of sitting in a room saying, what is our next meal going to be, or what's our next great menu innovation going to be. So one of the things that we focused on from the very early days, knowing that, here's one kid who's benefiting from the meals that we serve every day, and we started out serving about 500 meals a day to a few schools in Oakland. From the very, very beginning, we knew that we needed to achieve a large scale to truly have an impact, and we were really focused on wanting to have a broad impact. We didn't want to be just sort of a local effort that was serving a few kids or a few schools. We saw that there was a lot of that going on. There were a lot of localized efforts where groups of parents or philanthropists were sort of investing in one community or one school and improving the quality of food going on, in that one location. But access to us meant we want to have impact at a really broad scale at a national level. So we've focused on scale from the very beginning, and we focused both how we structured the organization, how we financed the organization, how we've grown the organization on the idea of growing really quickly, and how we've built our systems and how we've built our team has been based on this idea that in order to achieve our goals, we need to be nimble enough, but we also need to have the capacity to grow quickly and to keep up with, the demand that we see out there for what we're doing. So we've served over 80 million meals to date. That still doesn't feel like enough to us. I mean, we're serving over 200,000 meals a day, over 1 million meals a week. But when we think about the fact that there are, how many tens of millions of kids, hundreds of millions of kids are in this country that don't have access to high quality food, we're not satisfied until we're actually serving all of them, until they all have access to high quality food and they all have the ability to choose the high quality food that they deserve the most. But we've grown at a for us it's felt like a pretty rapid pace, and we've grown into 7 different regions. This is encompassing 25 different metropolitan areas and about a little over 1,000 school sites that we're serving. Many of these have, there's tons of stories of how we've grown and why we've grown and all of that. And if we want to get into any of that in Q&A, we can certainly do that. We've chosen each of the different regions that we've gone to for various reasons. I think one of the hardest decisions we ever made was expanding from California to Washington, D.C. In our 3rd year of operating. We had a team of about 50 people, mostly working in the culinary center in Oakland. We had another small culinary center in L.A., and we had a whole group of schools in D.C. who was saying, we really need high quality food in our community. And we had investors and advisors and mentors on both sides of the map saying, some saying that's going to be the biggest mistake you ever make is expanding to a place that's a 6-hour plane flight away, and you're not going to have enough control over what's going on there. And then other people saying, you know what, you're never going to have the credibility of being a national company until you're spanning the East Coast and West Coast. So we took a leap again, and we said, until we can prove that we're not just a California company, we're going to be just a California company. And so we took a leap early on and expanded into Washington, D.C., very different community from either Oakland or L.A. where we had operated before. And it was really hard. We made a lot of mistakes in expanding there. Kristen and I both had to move our families to DC for a couple of months and oversee operations and get the right team in place, and a lot of stuff that we didn't foresee. But looking back on it, it was the best decision we ever made, because once we were in DC, we had schools in New York calling and Houston calling, and all over the country saying, oh, now this isn't just this sort of Berkeley food company that's doing some healthy food thing. This is a national concern, and this is a company that can, an organization that can be relevant to kids in inner city DC as well as in a place like Berkeley where we started. So. No offense to Berkeley. I still live in Berkeley, and I'm very proud to live in Berkeley. But that growth has also involved growing our team. And I think this slide is a little bit outdated. Our team is now over 1,000 employees, spread across those 7 different regions, and still growing quickly. But we make all of our own school meals every day. And so we have a large production team of, that involves everything from dishwashing to scooping food to cooking food to making sure that everything is running on time and the logistics behind that. So we have a really large team, and one of the things that we've focused on, we have a huge amount of focus and value on the kind of food and the quality of food that we serve every day, but we have an equally large focus on the kind of jobs and the quality of jobs that we create every day. Because if we're not creating great jobs, we're also not going to be able to serve great food. The two have to go hand in hand. And so we've had all kinds of just wonderful stories of people we had a woman who joined our team when we moved to our first new facility, which was over in Alameda, and it was a McDonald's restaurant that we retrofitted, and we had taken out all of the equipment and put in our steamers and our cooking kettles and things like that. And she came in as a high school dropout who was looking for her path in life, and she was kind of interested in cooking. And so she came in as a prep cook, and she was about 19 years old when she joined our team in Alameda, and she has just grown over the last 5 years to now she's one of our trainers and leaders in the company. When we open a new kitchen or when we're training a new group of employees, she is the one that we send in there. She's bilingual. She's got a great, she tells her own story of how she's grown and learned everything from cooking, but also, planning and culinary arts and purchasing and, all these skills that she's built as she's been a part of helping us to grow the company. And we have just, now 1,000 stories like that of people who've come and joined our team and come for a job, but they're staying for more of a career. And that's something that we've been incredibly proud of as we've been growing. The other thing that we've learned, I think we didn't start out with this vision, but I think one of the things that we have learned is that we knew we wanted to start a movement, and we kind of knew that this was going to be more than just a school meal program, but we didn't know exactly what that movement was going to look like. And I think what we've learned is that what that movement looks like is actually, in sort of business terms, is building a brand, and building a brand that stands for something that's more than just your product. So that brand for us has created this platform for engagement with families in more places than just in the school lunchroom. And so that's kind of helped us to evolve into a company that can interact with families in other parts of their lives. And we've just recently taken this into a whole new sector and launched a retail product line. Largely because of our listening, because we've been listening to the families that we serve every day, and we've heard parents and teachers say, you know what, it's great that you're feeding my kid this great food at school, but how can I get access to it? Or I have a kid that's at another school that doesn't have your food at school, so how can I get the same kind of quality food in a different environment? So we've just in August launched our retail product line that's a meal kit line. So these are, I don't think I have a picture of it in this deck, but it's basically merchandised right next to the Lunchables in Safeway, and we picked that place very, very purposefully for a few different reasons. One is that the families that we've been hearing from for the last several years, that's what they've told us over and over again. We need more convenient but high quality options. Our lifestyles aren't getting any slower, and although we would love to cook every meal from scratch at home for our families, we're on the go a lot, and we need something that's higher quality than what's currently out there. From a retailer perspective, as we started talking to retailers about this, we talked to companies like Safeway who said, you know what, this is the category in the store, is the only category in the store that is completely dominated by one brand and one product, and that's Oscar Mayer. And every other aisle of the grocery store, you walk down, and there's dozens of different brands and dozens of different products to choose from. There have been natural, introductions and higher quality and healthier things, but this is the one part of the grocery store where grocers were telling us, we just need something better in this aisle. We've gotten, all of this great innovation in other parts of the store, but this is the place that we need something better. So those two things coming together, families saying we're looking for something better, and retailers saying this is a real opportunity in the grocery store, led us to launch this as our first product line. And we're only a few months in, but it's been a real kind of new adventure for us, and kind of starting a new part of our business and launching a CPG company kind of within our company, and seeing how that can create synergies that are, not just felt amongst our families and our schools and, the consumers, but there are synergies internally in our team. We have, our finance and accounting team supporting this new product launch. We have people who are learning new skills. We have our purchasing department, now purchasing products for both retail outlets and schools, and it's been a really interesting kind of just exercise in business growth. I think that we're finally now at a stage where we can do something like this and launch into a new product line. We did try a retail product expansion several years ago, and it was too soon for us. And I can tell other stories about that whole process, but I think we've learned about there are different stages when you're ready for different kinds of growth. So I think I'm realizing I'm taking up a lot of my time talking, and I want to open it up for questions as soon as I can. So I'm happy to talk about anything that I've talked about so far, or other things that you'd like to hear about. I think that's the last slide in my presentation. Maybe we'll open up for questions now.
And if we can use the microphones too, because it's being videotaped. So there's a microphone there, please. Thank you.
Well, it's a really inspiring model. I love hearing about it. I love hearing the values-based you actually get started? What was your first funding? What has been your sort of financial modeling?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we started in our second year at Haas. We were, as I said, we were kind of starting the job search process. Everybody was going to interviews and things like that in the fall. And we looked at each other in about December and said, you know what, we've got to take ourselves off of the interview track and go onto the fundraising track instead. Because neither of us had the personal wealth to sort of get this started on our own. So we needed to raise outside funding to get the company started. And we figured with the equipment and the, kind of the infrastructure that we needed to build to actually make and deliver food, we needed about $500,000 to get started. So that at that point, we looked at different models. We said, well, maybe we should see if we could get a grant and start a nonprofit. And there was not a single foundation out there that was willing to give us a $500,000 grant to build a kitchen and take all this risk. But we started talking. I mean, interestingly, all of the initial investors that we brought on board, we met through Haas. I mean, it was people who came in as speakers. It was, people who were involved through the IBD program. And we just started talking to people, investors, socially responsible investors and double bottom line investors about this idea. And, at that point, we had a PowerPoint deck about half the length of this one I just showed you guys with, here's our idea, here's what we want to do, here's our vision, painting this great picture of the change that we wanted to create in schools. And, we started asking investors to take a risk on us. And so we raised our first, we got our first term sheet for investment on our graduation day, May 18th or 19th of 2006, and happened to also be the same day that Kirsten was having her first baby. So she was in the hospital. I was on the phone with her husband saying, this is what they're saying in the term sheet. What should we negotiate? And we ended up, between that was they're now called DBL investors, was our first sort of venture capital investor. And we also had an angel investor who came in that first round to bring in about $500,000 to get started. And so we closed that round of investment just after my wedding day, which was a couple weeks later. And so we decided to, we knew that from a financial standpoint, from a business standpoint, we had to get started in the new school year. So we had to start serving meals the date is still etched in our mind. It was August 8th, 2006, was the first day of school for the schools that had sort of agreed to take the risk on working with us from a customer standpoint. So we sort of backed that up and said, well, we need to have money in the bank by July 15th, maybe, to start buying food and preparing food and hiring a driver and getting the truck lined up. So we were able to close that round of financing right in early July, and started making the purchases and paying the rent right after that. And then from there, we've raised capital from both sort of socially driven venture capital. We've also in more recent years brought in, interestingly, we've brought in foundations as investors because of our very strong social mission, but also the fact that we have a viable sort of business model that allows foundations to leverage their balance sheet and to invest their endowment dollars, not their philanthropic dollars, but they're investing from their balance sheet in socially responsible companies. Now it's kind of it's a very cool new area of finance.
Is it sustainable from the schools? Are they buying the lunches?
Yeah. On the customer side, the business model is largely, about between 70 and 80% of the meals that we serve to schools are fully reimbursable by the federal government. So because they're going to kids who qualify for free or reduced price lunch. So the federal government provides about $2.85 per lunch for those kids who eat those meals at school. So for many schools, it's a pretty seamless financial transaction where the schools pay us for the meals, but then they in turn get reimbursed by the government for either most of the cost or all of the cost of those meals. And then in schools where for the other 30% of meals that we serve, the parents are usually paying the cost of those meals to the school. But it is we're not profitable yet because we've invested so much in growth. But we've been on track and on plan towards our goal of profitability in the next year or two.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for coming here.
Yeah.
Can you discuss some of the operational challenges that you're facing as you move into retail, specifically around meat?
It's a great question, very specific. Well, it's interesting. The operations behind our school meals business are obviously quite different from the operations behind our retail business. At the same time, our meat supplier specifically is the same supplier that supplies both sides of our business. So the meat that you find in our turkey sandwiches, is the same as the turkey that's in our turkey meal kits. And it's a partnership with Diestel Turkey. That's a great turkey ranch here in California. And another company that does the processing and the slicing. One of the things that we learned very quickly in introducing a retail product, especially a refrigerated retail product, is that shelf life is a big issue. So we looked at all different ways, and I think one of the reasons why there hasn't been a lot of innovation in this category of the grocery store is that there haven't been a lot of ways to extend shelf life on meat and other proteins without injecting a lot of preservatives into the product. So we found a new packaging technology that's just starting to gain traction. That's called high pressure pasteurization. That allows meat to be sealed in a airtight pack, just bombarded with high pressure water that kills all of the spores and bacteria or anything that might grow in there, and provides meat with up to a 90-day or more than 90-day shelf life in a refrigerated environment without any preservatives. So it's been great, kind of making use of new technology and new innovations in the sort of food industry, and taking that into this category has been it's been exciting for us.
Quick question about the retail model that you guys are developing. The food that you guys were bringing to schools, and you showed that in contrast with what was already there, there's a big difference in that picture. Looking at your new retail product, you compare that to the Lunchables on the shelf, they don't look drastically different, but curious how you guys are going to develop that, or if there's a way to market that to show that other than clean packaging, like that's truly a superior product to what's already there.
Yeah. So the main difference, I'm going to move over here out of the light so I can see some of the rest of the group. The main difference between what we've created and what's currently on the shelf is that our product has nothing artificial in it, and it has no artificial colors, preservatives, or flavors, and it's not marketed by using the dessert as the draw. So if you look at the category of Lunchables today, there's like a Reese's peanut butter cup or it's always a dessert that's front and center saying, here, come eat me, and by the way, we'll give you some kind of mystery meat and other things too. So it's in the quality of the ingredients and also in the nutrition. So it's whole grain crackers, it's real cheese, it's antibiotic-free meat. So it's a much higher quality product, but also a higher nutritional integrity product compared to what's currently out there.
Hi, I was wondering what your plans are to measure impact. Are you going to be able to track maybe obesity rates at the schools, and is there pressure to do that from some of your funders?
It's a good question. It's one that we've talked with a lot of different researchers from a lot of different angles: public health researchers, medical researchers, nutrition researchers, and we've looked at a lot of different ways to measure impact. Across the board, what they've all told us is that there's, in the nutritional literature and the sort of literature on obesity and all of these different things, it's very hard to measure the impact of a very specific nutritional intervention. And so they've all advised us to sort of stay away from trying to do that, because a lot of people have tried it and not succeeded in actually showing that a specific nutritional intervention has a short-term or long-term impact, mainly because of all of the other things that affect all those different health issues, not just environment and family and genetics and other things that people might be choosing to eat or other eating habits. It's very hard to measure. It's very hard to measure. What we do measure is we measure our impact. We just gather a lot of stories and anecdotes from the schools that we work with, and we do a lot of surveying with the schools that we work with, mainly about attitudinal and behavioral changes that they're seeing in their schools. So we ask teachers if they're seeing changes in energy in the classes after lunch, and across the board, over half of teachers are saying that yes, they do. They do see that kids are more attentive, or they're better behaved, or they're not kind of hyper and overactive, or falling asleep and underactive, due to the the diet that they're eating. So currently we rely a lot on that on the anecdotal and the more kind of qualitative input that we get from the schools that we work with. We're looking at other ways to get more data driven. Our funders are looking mainly. A lot of our funders are actually looking at the sort of broader social impact of job creation and quality of jobs that we're creating and the impact that we're having just on changing we look at things like how many fresh pieces of fruit have we served and have been consumed in our schools, and that's sort of a proxy for nutritional improvement, short of doing major kind of interventional studies.
Thank you for coming again. When I think about our national food, I think a little bit about regional taste differences. Do you notice that at all, both from the anecdotal feedback of your kids or what's actually being consumed at the different areas?
Yeah.
And then also just a clarification, do you come in and come alongside other options at schools, or are you fully replacing what's already there?
Good questions. So the regional question is a really good one, and that's been one where we've had a lot of learning as we've grown. I mean, we started here in Oakland with an Oakland-based chef and a set of menu items that the first time we served quesadillas, the phone was ringing off the hook, and teachers were saying, "Why did you put yellow cheese in the quesadillas? Our kids eat white cheese in quesadillas." So and that's not just a regional; it's a cultural thing. We were like, "Oh yeah, we shouldn't have put the cheddar cheese in the quesadillas." So we've learned things like that, but that's one of those things, being open to learning and open to changing based on feedback. But as we've expanded into new regions, like when we expanded into New Orleans, it's probably one of the best examples of it. We sent our chef into New Orleans, and she just went and worked with local chefs and did all kinds of different sort of taste testing and developing jambalaya and developing a red beans and rice recipe and things like that, which then we of course tried to serve the jambalaya to kids in California, and they were like, "What is this?" And they it was a very foreign taste for kids in California, but kids in New Orleans, they eat it once a week at least. So we've definitely developed regional menu. I mean, things as different as jambalaya versus quesadillas, but we also do things like we do regional variation on certain things. Like we learned when we launched in Colorado that in Colorado you don't put red sauce on your enchiladas, you put green sauce on your enchiladas. It's chile verde, not chile rojo. So so we've learned things like that where it's the same enchilada dish, but it's just a different flavor profile of the sauce. So we've over the years we've been learning and regionalizing our menus where appropriate. We also have a lot of our foods are very kind of universally appealing to kids. We have a great spaghetti and meatballs. We have a great whole grain hamburger. We have a grass-fed beef hot dog that has 5 ingredients in it, and that goes over well in DC and New York as well as Houston and San Francisco. And then the other question you asked is are we positioned as the only food option, or are we positioned with other food options in schools? It varies, actually. For the last 7 years, most of the last 7 years, we've, for the most part, been the only food option in the schools that we serve because the schools take on our whole program. More and more now, as we're one of the kind of big inflection points we're going through right now is translating what we do to much larger school districts. And in those larger school districts, there's, change takes more time, it's slower, even just ramping up our own supply chain and our production takes time to, work with this. If we were to work with New York City public schools, they are serving 1 million kids a day, just in that district. And so you can imagine the supply chain and the ramp up time to even for us to get to that level would be a huge shift. So we're more and more actually kind of developing programs and taking some of our products and developing them into more what we're calling modularized offerings for school districts to offer them as one offering of many in a bigger lunch line, or maybe offering our breakfast in the classroom program, but doing their own lunch program or other things like that. So that the answer is that we're evolving to be both.
Hi, thank you. I want to ask a little bit about the demand. How do you work to increase demand from the schools or from the parents, or do you just meet the demand that comes? It's a combination. I mean, I would say we're still at a point where
we're still kind of keeping up with the demand that's out there. And as I said, one of the places where we see the biggest opportunity for greater impact is being able to work with some of the larger school districts. The largest school district that we work with right now is San Francisco Unified School District, which in the Bay Area is a really big school district, but in the country is not that big of a school district. It's about 70,000 kids in the district, whereas, like I said, New York City Public Schools has 1 million kids in the district. So the order of magnitude is different there. But even places like those large districts, there is a really strong demand for healthier food products and higher quality foods. But the time to kind of get that demand translated into an actual partnership with us, or change in their own supply chain, it takes more time. So I would say that the demand is still incredibly strong. Now it's just a question of how to map what we do to the systems that we are needing to grow into.
In your quest to achieve greater coverage nationwide and also to have a bigger social impact, have you considered partnering with other organizations such as, for example, the Edible Schoolyard and Healthy School Lunches that Alice Waters Foundation and maybe a handful of other organizations nationwide are doing, or do you see them more as competition because they are providing the in-house school lunches and you would be providing the external? Maybe you can expand a little bit on cooperation in that context.
Yeah. Well, so we have partnered with a number of different foundations and sort of localized efforts. One example is the Kellogg Foundation, is a foundation that's been very focused on increasing access to healthy food. They have a very specific regional focus in certain parts of the country, and one of those areas is New Orleans. Which interestingly is also a place where Edible Schoolyard has a pretty strong presence. And so we found that in a place where there's a strong Edible Schoolyard presence and Kellogg Foundation is investing in sort of building the community capacity and education and things like that around increasing the demand for higher quality and healthier foods, it's a perfect place for us to go, because Kellogg Foundation has helped schools to buy equipment to be able to work with the food the way that we deliver it. They've enabled schools to break away from their districts that are not providing the quality of food that they want and to be more autonomous. But the other part of your question was more about districts that are what's called self-operated. In very basic terms, school districts either are self-operated, which means they make all their own food kind of on-site, or they have a food service director who kind of directs the production of food, or they're outsourced. And only about 10 to 20% of schools in the country are actually outsourced. And we don't see that as the best place for us to grow, partly because many schools will never outsource for many different reasons. And so one of the things, as I was saying about sort of our ability to modularize our product offerings, is one of the things we're trying to do with that, and we're having a lot of success with, is that we become a partner to those self-operated districts, because they may be making all their own, they may be making all their own sandwiches, but they may not have the kettles to cook pasta, and so we can, partner with them to provide a great pasta dish for them. So there's a lot of that's kind of the place that we're focused the most on right now, is partnering with those self-operated districts in a very sort of synergistic way. We don't see them at all as competitors, and every food service director that we talk to pretty much says, well, can you help me with this, and can you help me with this, and can you help me with this? It's rather than seeing us as like, well, you're trying to take away what I'm doing. It's much more of a partnership, because they're in this very resource constrained, capacity and sort of infrastructure constrained environment.
Hi. In managing all the partnerships with all the different regions across the country, can you talk more about the differences and challenges that you have to face? Is there general differences in doing business in the West Coast versus East Coast and so forth? In the world that we operate in school meals, the National School Meal Program is a USDA-funded program, so it's a national program, but it's administered at the state level. So the biggest differences that we see are in
every time we go into a different state, the program is administered in a slightly different way. In some states, it's administered by the Department of Education. In other states, it's administered by the Department of Agriculture. And just the differences between Department of Ag states and Department of Ed states, just the implementation of that program and the kind of logistics behind it can be very different. So that's one of the kind of operational differences we see between different regions. And I think I already talked a little bit about the palette and kind of menu differences we see in different regions.
This is actually my question, but I didn't want to leave the computer. I wanted to ask about your partnership with Kirsten, especially for people here who don't know her. It sounds like it started off pretty fabulous and very exciting at graduation. How have you evolved that? What are her strengths compared to yours, and how do you negotiate a co-leadership of this organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we met here at Haas. We were we met at math camp actually in our first week, and we were introduced by a mutual friend who actually now works for us at Rev Foods. And we were friends first. We were sort of became friends, and then started working on this business idea together. And it's been really interesting because it's been an incredibly strong partnership from the very beginning. And I think a lot of it is because we have very complementary skill sets, and we've both recognized the skill sets that each of us has, and that where our strengths are. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that anybody's ever given us is, you should never try to change your weaknesses, because you're never going to really change your weaknesses. You should always try to build on your strengths. And so I think we've both tried to do the best of that and try to build on our strengths, which happen to be a very complementary set of strengths. I think it's we see our partnership a little bit like a marriage. It's like you can't. You have to have open communication. You have to have, if there's ever an issue, you got to resolve it. You can't, just because you're just business colleagues doesn't mean you can't work. You don't have to work through things. And so I think that we've both really prioritized the partnership and the relationship as a very important part of the success of the business. We've always had distinct roles, although we've also done a lot of kind of trading off of responsibilities as we've needed to support each other through the years. And she's always been the CEO, and I think that's awesome. And I've never wanted to be the CEO, and I've always sort of been responsible for our mission and our brand and our nutrition standards and our kind of food quality, and that's where my real passion and interest is. And so I think it's been a really smooth partnership through the 8 years that we've been working together, and I think it's a great part of the company too. I mean, we're also both moms, and we've both become moms since starting the company, and so we've had to we've each kind of supported each other through having kids and through needing to flex when we've needed to flex. But we've also, I think the other thing that we both really share is that we work really hard. I think both of our husbands have told us, I don't know anybody who works harder than you, except for maybe her. We both just have a work ethic that's like we're so committed to making this company work and building this organization that even though we both have 2 kids and a family at home, it's like this is another kid that we have to take care of, and you can't neglect it, just like you can't neglect your kids at home.
Is this even on? Okay, great. Thank you so much for your inspiring talk. And I know everyone's looking at their watches, so I'll keep it quick. But high quality is usually associated with expensive. So I'm just wondering, how do you make it profitable? And are you thinking about introducing organic, maybe gluten-free or vegan options for the school meals as well?
So good question. I could talk for a long time, and I know we only have another few minutes. I mean, we've really focused on cost management as a part of building our menus, doing our food development, and that's why we haven't ever been 100% organic. Because that's cost prohibitive at this point in the food system. We've focused on the quality of ingredients and focused on making sure that the things that we don't want in our food aren't in our food, like all the artificial preservatives and colors and flavors and things like that. And we've focused on the quality of preparation of the food, which in many cases actually kind of reduces the amount of manufacturing in the beginning part of the supply chain, and so that it allows for cost reduction in and of itself. But I think we've been very careful about building our supply chain and building strong partnerships in our supply chain to bring suppliers on board who are supporters of our mission, which helps us to negotiate good prices in the supply chain. And we've been very focused on making sure that when we design a new product or a new menu item, that it's designed within the parameters of our financial constraints, rather than saying, well, wouldn't it be great to create this and then let's see if we can fit it into the financial model. The cost of food is a big part of the design process for us.
Kirsten, there's so much wisdom in what you've just told us and what you've done, right? And that we all might be more kid-inspired, that we all might recognize that behaviors are not intractable if we approach them the right way. So many of the things that you've done. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.